Welcome to the LaRouche Pack Monday night, in this case, Tuesday night strategic discussion. Hope everyone had a good Memorial Day weekend. It is Tuesday, May 30th. I'm your host tonight, Mike Steger. And the special speaker tonight is Kesha Rogers. And Kesha is going to take up, as many of you know, Kesha keeps a close eye on what's happening outside planet Earth, because it can almost be the most important thing on planet Earth. So she's going to give us some insights and kind of a strategic overview of, in some ways, I think one of the most important subjects, which is getting outside the constant propaganda narrative. But before we get outside of it, let's just come to quick terms with that propaganda narrative. Because in most cases, what's driving much of our world is an insane propaganda agenda. Maybe first and foremost of that could be the debt ceiling discussions in Washington, which are threatening perhaps to derail or blow up. Who knows? But it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden getting together does not bode well for the American people. And that was certainly seems to be the case, that nothing was really done to address the core problem, which was the Green New Deal. The $1.2 to nearly $2 trillion in spending on so-called infrastructure and other projects that had nothing to do with that, almost entirely had to do with the what AOC had initially put forward as the Green New Deal, a complete shutdown of oil, gas, and coal production and use of energy supply as much as possible, while at the same time throwing huge amounts of money, massive money printing and debt to fuel the so-called green energy. And a report came out this past week from the International Energy Agency. In 2022, $2.8 trillion was invested into energy supply, 2.8 trillion total globally, based on their estimates in 2022. Of that 2.8 trillion, $1.7 trillion was spent on solar panels or solar investments and so on. That's over 60% of global investment into a kind of power supply that could not fuel the production of its own existence. It's a complete consumer product, and it's a huge waste of land area and human effort more generally. So this is the underlying real problem, is that while we're distracted by the debt deals and Target's perverse, children agenda and the entire corporate agenda on culture, you have a choking down of the underlying critical points that determine our ability to advance as a nation, as a people, and as a broader planetary civilization. That has to be reversed. And there is nothing in the debt negotiations on that at all. Now, at the same time, there is a kind of internecine warfare by this globalist oligarchy who's choking off energy supply to do everything possible to shut down President Trump's growing hegemony in this kind of the conservative or popular base of the American political electorate. Trump has made it very clear he is not really running as a traditional, of any sort, Republican. He is really running, whether it's on abortion, on Social Security and Medicare, on infrastructure, on the space program, on building new cities, as a kind of a visionary, traditional visionary American leader. Elon Musk says he wants an ordinary president or an ordinary person. Well, that just shows he smokes too much pot. What we need is an extraordinary person as president. We need someone extraordinary to get us out of this deep hole we've dug. And so you see efforts in Texas going after Ken Paxton, the attorney general. A lot of this is shenanigans run by the Bush League, run by the kind of Con Inc. or Republican oligarchs who are totally in bed with Democratic Party oligarchs. There's no difference, except they have different, tribes they finance. And this is all an attack to break up a greater coherence in the country, both within the MAGA base but also within the broader electorate, who recognizes we are quickly sinking under this kind of neoliberal globalist agenda. And perhaps the best metaphor for how rapidly a nation can be destroyed under this agenda is Ukraine. So as people know, the situation there is escalating. To a large extent, it looks like Russia is preparing its offensive or counteroffensive. Who knows what will unfold in terms of how we get there? But what's been happening lately is, of course, Russia's been targeting now military intelligence and headquarters centers and arms depots, weapons depots in Ukraine with precision strikes, I guess happening for 3 or 4 days now, some with probably significant effect. There's been some attempts by the Ukrainians to retaliate, but Ukraine has been destroyed as a nation, where it was the heartbed of agriculture and industry for much of Eastern Europe, whether it's in the Soviet era or post, especially the area where the fighting is taking place: rocketry, advanced industries, coal mining, nuclear power plant supply. It's the richest soil in the world, some of which has now been poisoned by nuclear fallout because of certain radiation-tipped weapons. So it's just been destroyed. Maybe more than half the country, or upwards of 10+ million people, have left the country permanently, will never return. This is not due to the effect of a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. It is due to the effect of this globalist neoliberal agenda, which is best identified as the British Empire. So tonight, the strategic focus is not then on the games played by the British Empire, but the kind of warfare we need to wage as true patriots. How do we advance? How do we develop? How do we give people a sense that the world is not some drug-induced dystopia where people should run to the new opium dens of opioids and like the name of the drug just slipped my mind, but people know what I'm referencing. But that there's an actual great potential within mankind to prevail over all of this insanity, and that in reality, perhaps there is a much larger majority ready to operate today to build and advance our civilization, to look to the stars, and to move forward. And this is certainly what President Trump is doing. He deserves people's allegiance. People should stop playing these silly games. But it's, as we've said for now 6 years, Trump can't do this alone. And certainly he needs Kesha Rogers' help. So let me bring in Kesha Rogers on that note and see what she has to say.
Oh, 1 second. Okay, great. Thanks, Michael. Well, I want to start off by saying that in discussion of what Michael just brought up in terms of what the population is being bombarded with, and the fact that you've probably heard on the news and everywhere, you continue to hear the debt ceiling debate going on. You continue to hear about the attacks on President Trump. You continue to hear about impeachment proceedings, as was discussed, going on in Texas against the Texas Attorney General. And you also continue to hear about just the grotesque and evil attacks on our young people going on in our education system. And you hear about what's happening with Target and making tuck swimsuits and promoting LGBTQIA plus whatever. But how many of you actually heard about the incredible discoveries and breakthroughs that are going on the International Space Station that are leading to what could be essential for a transformation of mankind, a transformation of the United States, of what we can be doing to address this question of what it means to be truly human. The discoveries being made in fields of science, technology, in creating new medications that could actually prolong lives for a very long time. I actually have just put out, and hopefully it'll be on the website soon. It's in the editing process right now. I just wrote a new article entitled "The Axiom Space Mission and Memorial Day Grounds for a Bodacious Future." And what we just experienced with the remarkable 10-day mission of the Axiom Space private crew that just went to the International Space Station was just totally just emotionally moving in terms of what we have to address for how we're going to unite mankind in a time where we are seeing the insane policies of putting billions of dollars into a Ukraine war that's leading to massive carnage and the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, where President Trump himself today, in response to that, has continued to say that if he were president, the Russia-Ukraine catastrophe would never have happened. All of those tens of thousands of people who died would be alive and well today. And of this, almost everyone, including Democrats, understand and know. And so why is President Trump not only against the continuation of these endless wars, but has laid out a vision for the nation, to a vision that is going to increase the standard of living, not only for Americans and making America great again, but really would increase the standard of living for all people. And as we see this continued move toward the potential for a nuclear war going on, where President Trump opposes, what you also see right now is that as we speak, as all of this is happening, as we're putting billions of dollars into the Biden green agenda, that there is a potential for a real transformation happening on the International Space Station, where you are now seeing just this past week with the Axiom 2 space mission, where 4 astronauts were flown to the International Space Station on a 10-day mission. The crew consisted of Commander Peggy Whitson. Peggy Whitson has actually flown in space many times. She is the first female astronaut to fly more than any other American and any other international female. Also, the flight consisted of John Schaffner, who is from actually in the area where I'm living now in Tennessee. He lives in the area of Knoxville, Tennessee, and was actually born and raised from where my husband is from in Fairbanks, Alaska. But John Schaffner was the pilot. There's 2 mission specialists, include 2 Saudi Arabian young people who were a part of the flight, Rihanna Banawi and Ali Al-Qarni from the Saudi Kingdom, who participated in some of the most extraordinary science research. And this was the second private space mission. Actually, the pilot was one of the first people next to the first Axiom Space mission to actually pay for his seat on the flight, and paid over $55 million. Now, I just want to tell you about what some of Axiom Space is doing. As many people know, or may have heard, the the International Space Station, which has been in commission for flying over 254 miles above Earth, and has been in existence for over 2 decades, for over 21 years. There's been extraordinary science work, technology demonstrations that have been done over this time. And as the move toward integrating private space flight, private space mission has continued to take flight, to emerge there. The Axiom Space is the only private company that has been given a platform with NASA to be able to connect its space station, which it is now in the process of building, to the current International Space Station. And in 2025, it will actually be transitioning its space station, the Axiom Space Station, to be a free-floating station in place of the International Space Station. And what they're doing already is Axiom Space has been involved in many different areas, including the fact that the founder of the company also is involved in intuitive machines, working in areas of advancing hardware for sending to the moon, for the Moon Mars mission, which was critical under President Trump. President Trump and his visionary Artemis program to launch Americans back to the moon for the first time in over 50 years is now an ongoing mission that is happening. We just saw the return of the first uncrewed Artemis 1 mission and the science and impact of that, and the astronauts for the Artemis 2 mission have been announced and will be flying in 2022 in 2023, end of 2023 to the international, to the orbit the moon. But how are we getting ready for these flights? How are we getting ready for these missions? It's through the work that's being done on the International Space Station. And that is also work that is going to transform the living conditions here on Earth, as you have a number of different experiments. Over 20 experiments just went up on this flight of the Axiom 2 crew. And I want to go through some of those experiments they participated in and give you a sense of what it is when we look at some of the effects going on here on the ground. The impact of the millions of people being diagnosed every year with cancer, or people who are waiting on transplants for heart and kidney diseases. How is it that the research and development that's going on in space, in microgravity right now, could actually transform create the ability for people to be able to live longer, to understand how the process works in terms of how cancers clone themselves. Well, this is some of the research that's going on the International Space Station right now, and was a part of the experiments that the Axiom 2 astronauts participated in. And this has been going on for a while. The Axiom 2 mission that just flew up, as a matter of fact, they just completed their mission. They undocked today from the International Space Station and are on their way back. They were flown up there on May 21st and docked to the International Space Station, to the Harmony module, and spent 8 days doing extensive science research, as in collaboration with many universities, including the Stanford Stem Cell Research, Connecticut Regenerative Medicine, and just to look at some of the research that was going on through this program. And when my article is posted on the website, I list some areas in terms of if you want to dig deeper into it, how you can find this on the Axiom website, and go into some of the areas of study that they participated in. And I have to say too, on this mission, as I said, Peggy Whitson was the first female astronaut to clock 665 days in space. She's a former NASA astronaut and now is directly working with Axiom Space. For the first time, the first female astronaut from Saudi Arabia, selected by the Saudi Arabian space company or space center, was selected. And I mean, this is a big deal in terms of looking at the fact that on the International Space Station, 11 people were, prior to the undocking of the Axiom 2 that just happened today, were participating. And on the space station, 3 of them cosmonauts, Russian cosmonauts, 5 Americans, 1 United Arab Emirates, 1 UAE astronaut, and 2 Saudi Arabian astronauts were there working together at a time where you have so much move toward destruction, toward nations being pitted against each other, and toward total chaos going on right here in our own country in the United States. And so today I'm out, and I'm seeing out and about, and turn on the news, and first thing they're talking about is all of the negativity that's going on, and not one mention of what just happened with this remarkable flight that took place in collaboration with SpaceX. And SpaceX took the Axiom crew to the International Space Station there. But just think about this, because I know a lot of you in your own lives, your own family, may be looking at the conditions of how many people are suffering because of what may seem like the lack of breakthroughs in medical science and technology. And in other words, also the fact that you've seen so much done in detriment and destruction to medical science and technology. But just imagine if we were able to look at what were the causalities behind a lot of what people are suffering from in terms of diseases, and be able to reverse that by just looking at it in low Earth orbit, or looking at it in microgravity and the effects of microgravity on stem cell research, on tissue regeneration. This is some of the areas in which they were discussing or doing experiments on an International Space Station, including looking at how you can actually generate tissues, stem cell for heart, and regenerating heart, skin cells, and also looking at kidney regeneration, also looking at various areas of one of the most fascinating areas of research that was being done, that we're going to be looking at the impact of when the research is brought here back on Earth. How is it that, for example, on cancer studies, and they were studying 3 different types of cancers. One was colon cancer, leukemia, and breast cancer, which is probably one of the worst cancers in terms of the numbers of people who acquire it across the world, across the nation and across the world. But they were looking at, why do these cancers actually rapidly clone themselves? And what is the agent that's causing these cancers, particularly looking at breast cancer, of an agent called ADAR1. And I don't want to go into too much of the weeds in terms of this, but I think it's really important that people think about, what if we actually had more funding going into these areas of research versus what we're doing to promote the mutilation of children and their genitals right now, what we're doing to promote all of the evil policies of war that's happening. But you think about it, we're on the verge of a breakthrough for humanity. And just imagine how much more we can accomplish if we actually had real leadership in the White House. If President Trump were back in the White House and promoting what he started in terms of some of the advancements in nuclear science and technology, some of the advancements in what his visionary leadership in the Artemis program, the Moon Mars mission, what he has set forth in his Agenda 47. And I know we've spoken about this a lot, and the question of how you're going to actually increase a quantum leap in the standard of living of the population. As Michael said, if you have a society that's being bombarded by opioid crisis, by fentanyl, by a collapse in the economic conditions of the population, then how are you actually creating these quantum leaps in the standard of living? This is beyond even just a question of building new cities. It's a question of if you're going to improve the productivity of your citizenry, of your society, then you actually have to improve the conditions in which they're able to have longevity and to address the types of challenges confronting us in terms of being able to figure out how we solve cures to diseases, and not creating more, but actually solving those cures to diseases. So this was quite fascinating to me as far as on a personal level as well. And I know, many people and maybe listening to this in your own families have had people who've been waiting for transplants, for kidney transplants, liver transplants. And just imagine if we were able to create the ability to have regenerative medicine in building the building blocks for creating new tissues that could actually be a part of creating new area, that could be a part of helping to transition into waiting on transplants to come. This is quite remarkable. Or if you actually had the ability to address in terms of creating heart cells, kidney cells for transplant in people, in terms of, if you've seen this before, where people have reactions to different types of transplants that go into their body, how you would be able to deal with this. The other thing that I found quite remarkable on this mission is how much it was geared toward addressing young people. There were a number of different STEM research studies that were done: science, technology, engineering, art, math. And you think about what's going on in our education system today, where you have all of just the destructive policies that are being taught in our education system, instead of actually addressing how do young people participate in making creative discoveries. So a couple of things that happened on this mission with the International Space Station was the fact that you had the John Schoffer, the pilot of the mission, actually announced several different young people who won the art and poetry contest for space. And he was talking to young people around the world. What would space look like? And if we all lived in space, what would it look like? And also, some beautiful submissions of poetry from 10, 11-year-olds, where, you think about today, where 10 and 11 and, young people, students are not being given the opportunity to participate in this, using their imagination, their creative potential to be able to think outside of just what they're being bombarded with, and to imagine how we're going to create a better world and society. The other thing is we're looking at aerodynamics and the impact of aerodynamics in space and microgravity on flying a kite in space. And then this was a project that was taking place where young people throughout Saudi Arabia participated in a kite flying project here in terrestrial space here on Earth, and then in collaboration jointly with what was going on the International Space Station. So that just kind of gives you an idea of looking at what we can accomplish in terms of what would it look like if the United States, along with the globalist agenda, the British Empire, were not pushing the world to the brink of feudalism, of total chaos, of war, of just all of what we're seeing that's going on in our society right now, but that we could actually take leadership once again and have nations working together, and have the United States leading from the standpoint of what President Trump envisioned, has envisioned with his Agenda 47, in terms of putting an end to the globalist agenda and the end to the war drive, and actually putting forth a real mission for the United States. This is what we need to be discussing at this point in time. And so I want to just show you quickly here something very fascinating, which we look at. One second. Excuse me, 1 second. Let me get back to wrong one. Okay. All right. So we're going to be looking at, as I said, what companies like Axiom Space are doing. Axiom Space right now is not only developing the next module and next space station that's going to fly in low Earth orbit in place of the International Space Station, also continuing in connection with numerous nations. On the first Axiom Space mission, we saw that they flew a Canadian astronaut and private astronaut, also a Israeli private astronaut to the International Space Station. And you had just this recent flight, but Axiom Space is also developing the first spacesuits that will be worn by the astronauts that will be flying back to Mars in 2020, 2023, and will be landing on the moon in 2023, 2024. So, but I just want to show you quickly here. Let me just go back. What the next module is going to look like. There's going to be 4 different modules that are going to be flown over the course of starting in 2025 from Axiom Space. And as I said before, this is the first time, the only company that has the ability, has contracts signed with NASA to be able to connect its modules to the current International Space Station. And by the time they've gotten the 4th one up there, it will be able to connect to be free floating and will be replacing eventually the International Space Station. So this is just to show you, this is the Axiom habitation module. This will be the first module going up around 2025. So it's consisting of crew quarters, research, and manufacturing capabilities. Then you have the Axiom 2 habitation module, which is going to be an expanded crew quarter and research capacity. This is also going to include a beautiful new design of what is now called a cupola, or the windows, which is going to be unobstructed windows for the being able to look down at Earth from every single angle on the station at that time without an obstructed view. And it's going to be an egg-shaped module there. I think I have a brief picture of here. It's kind of hard to see there, but this is going to be an area where you can look out at Earth from every single angle and view. But so the next is the Axiom Research and Manufacturing module, where some of the research that's being done that I just discussed, along with other technology demonstration, science, health research, regenerative medicine, all these different types of areas are going to continue to be studied with the new Axiom module and research and manufacturing facility. And the last one that's going to be going up and put together there is the power and thermal module. So this is going to be support systems, power systems, different payloads. Axiom Space, the founder of it, is actually also part of one of the co-founders, Cam Gaffarani, is actually also involved in, he was part of founding the Intuitive Machines and X Energy, and some of these companies are very much involved in the development of nuclear power, nuclear systems here on Earth, as well as space propulsion systems, nuclear space propulsion systems. So this is just to give you an idea of what's going on that you may not be hearing about in the current theater of just theatrics and insanity that's happening in our society, that is not addressing the very question that Mr. LaRouche always addressed. What are you doing as a human being? What are you doing to actually improve the future, improve society for future generations? And I just wanted to end with this, because as I was looking at just the very moving and emotional farewell address and what was going on in the International Space Station, and thinking about how we have a commitment and obligation to our children, to grandchildren, to future generations, to put an end to the insanity that is bombarding our society right now, and start to think about what type of future are we building. And as yesterday, people participated in the memorial and ceremonies for Memorial Day in tribute to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, who gave their lives in wars, and as Mr. LaRouche spoke about in telling the story of his time in war, how many people weren't dying through bombardment of war, but they were dying during the wartime by all types of diseases and things that were going on. But I think one of the most important aspects in thinking about, how do you create a lasting peace in society? What is going to generate this idea of putting an end to wars and actually creating a situation where we can give a certain mission that is going to have a lasting effect on future generations? And I think that this is what you can say about the International Space Station, about what is going on in terms of, despite the fact that we have so many problems to address, that there's still a lot that's taking place in terms of creating real creative discoveries. And so I wanted to end with just this beautiful idea that was posted on the LaRouche PAC website. And if you didn't get a chance to look at this for Memorial Day, and think about this in the context of what I've been discussing here today, because my objective is never just to talk about, oh, space is great, let's talk about the joys of space. And I have to deal with people, and some of you probably on this call have this mindset, which would be very destructive mindset, which is, why do we talk about space when we have so many problems here on Earth? Why do we talk about space? International Space Station. I had a guy who said International Space Station is nothing but a green screen. I know I got one behind me, but International Space Station is not a green screen. And there are discoveries that are being made, or we never went to the moon. Well, I can tell you, we went to the moon, United States, 6 times. As a matter of fact, I've had the honor and privilege of actually interviewing and meeting and talking with a number of these individuals personally, who actually have walked on the moon. And if we get our priorities straight, again, not only will we be going back, and not only will we be going forward to Mars, but we will see a renewing of a mission for the United States that hasn't been seen in a very long time. And so, what did I just do? 1 second. So when Mr. LaRouche was talking about his experience in warfare and the lesson of wartime for statecraft, it just reminded me of this idea that we as human beings have a commitment and obligation to do what is going to create a better world. And in doing so, you actually have to remember what it means to be created in the image of God, the Creator. What are these discoveries a part of the continuation of the creative process of the earth and multiplying, subduing the earth, and continuation of the creative process of the universe as a whole. And so he says, the greatest thing about being human is to be truly a person who acts in a way which justifies the characterization of being man and woman equally made in the image of the creator of the universe. Given the power to transform this universe, capable of transmitting these discoveries from one generation to another, to build the human race from its initial imperfection as a beast-like creature with this quality into something much better. And that's what our mission is. That's what our goal is. That's what we can see coming from the potentials embedded in the great discoveries being made on the International Space Station, when you have nations such as the United States and Russia at odds and conflict with each other right now, along with other nations that are putting aside those differences and actually participating in making discoveries that's going to have a lasting effect on future generations. And if you think about this, you wonder, why is it that people have put so much effort into saying that, space is fake, International Space Station is fake, there's no cooperation, and they're going on, there's no discoveries being made, and what type of effect does this have on the psyche, on the mind of young people who should be participating in these beautiful discoveries that express the true meaning of being human? And so I'll leave it at that, just to think about, and I hope that you will take some time yourselves to go and look at some of just the extraordinary science that's going on, and think about, how we should be participating in that, and how the United States, if we had our priorities together, could be such a leader in these profound developments and discoveries. So, Michael, I'll turn it back over to you.